You're listening to the God Life Culture Podcast, where faith
and what's trending collide. Welcome to the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. This is Eddie.
What's up, everyone? This is Miguel, and we are so thankful that you are tuned in for another episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. If this is your first time listening, we want to say welcome to the God Life Culture Podcast. We hope that you are encouraged and blessed and motivated by our conversation today. If you are a returning listener, we want to say thank you so much for coming week after week to listen to the God Life Culture Podcast. If you are not subscribed, be sure to take this moment to hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we drop a new episode. We are officially in the fall season. We've been in the fall season, but I think now here in New York, we're actually starting to feel the fall. You know, the mornings are cold and, the
leaves are falling.
Changing,
all of that.
The afternoons are still hot, though. So it's like that weird situation where it's really cold in the morning, but like really warm in the afternoon, and then cold at night again, But I love the fall. So
it's the type of weather you need layers for, like don't go with a full blown like turtleneck thick type of situation. Like wear a cardigan, wear a sweater, wear a jacket, and then, something else under it so that when it gets to that high afternoon temperature, you're able to like remove a layer versus being stuck. I remember as a kid, you don't know as a kid, so you like get dressed, and I went to school in the city, so I had to take a train or a bus to school, and then all that walking, all that commuting, by the time you get there, you're hot. And then the way back, it's like you have a coat in your hand, long sleeve shirt, book bag. It's the type of the city kids really is like, you don't even know what to wear. Half the kids are going in shorts, other half is going in sweaters. It's that time of year. What can we do? But eventually we'll blink and it'll be Christmas.
Crazy.
Winter, snowing.
Let's get to Thanksgiving first. After Thanksgiving, then it's Christmas.
I mean, listen, it all happens in a blink of an eye. I feel like after October ends, it's holiday season and it's done.
When should we start playing Christmas music? Is it like, do we wait till after Thanksgiving? Do we wait till November? Like after October kind of ends and wraps up once we enter November? What do you do?
I think personally, I like Thanksgiving being the mark. Whether it is that you put your Christmas tree like up that night or the next day, kind of like, to me, I feel like that's acceptable. Like there's some people that are playing Christmas music now. It's kind of like relax, like sip on some what's that, pumpkin
apple
spice
cider.
or so, some apple cider. Relax. But to each his own. And I think that also, it's kind of nostalgic for a lot of people. The idea of the holiday season brings them like a lot of joy, a lot of good memories. So a lot of people like to tap into that a lot earlier than others. So who am I to say turn that Christmas music off? At the end of the day, if it brings you joy, why not?
Yeah.
But personally, I think Thanksgiving is a good jumping point for that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think last year I started a little bit before Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? So I don't know. We'll fill it out. We'll see. Is
your Christmas tree currently up?
No. No, that doesn't go up till after Thanksgiving too.
Yeah. All right. So last week we hit on a couple of topics in reference to like healthy adulting and what does that mean to, look at certain aspects of your life and, evaluate whether or not those things are being done effectively or healthily in your life. And there was one subject in particular that I think that caught a lot of interest and maybe deserved a little bit more time to like really dive into and divulge and like really dissect. And it was in reference to the idea of like energy tanks versus time tanks. Like energy management versus time management. And I think that time management is an idea that a lot of people are familiar with. You hear about that at work. You need to have good time management skills in order to get your daily tasks done and all of that. But the idea of energy management, I think, is a concept that is very new to a lot lot of people where maybe the concept and the idea, like the wording of it is new, but I think people understand what that is. But just in case you don't, like, it's something that we feel like is important to dive into.
Yeah. So when you talk about time tank and energy tank, you got into a little bit last week, but I know I was asking you earlier, like, explain a little bit more about that. So like, what is the time tank and what is the energy tank that you speak of?
Well, I mean, like, when it comes to reference to time tank and time management, is basically like, if you look at it on a day-to-day basis, you know how many hours you have in the day to get stuff done. There's 24 hours in a day. Let's say that on average you use 8 of those to sleep, 2 to commute. That's kind of leaving you with like 14 hours to kind of like figure out what to do. So that time tank is that analyzing, realizing I have X amount of time to get something done, or I have these 12 things I need to get done. How do I manage to get all this done in a day? So I got to spend an hour on this, 3 hours on that, 4 hours on this. And that's where like time tank and time management is, where there are people that are really great at that, like really like figuring that out. And there's people that struggle. And I think energy tank is the energy you have to actually get those things done.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not even only to like get a task done, is whether or not you want to engage in something. Do you have the energy or the mental energy capacity to sit down and go out with certain people, get certain things done? So you may have all the time in a day. You may have the freest time. You may have a good 8 hours to get something done, but not necessarily you have the energy to go do that. And I think that that's where the difference is.
Yeah, and I think that's a struggle. We're talking about healthy adulting last week, and I think it's something that as you get older, you realize the whole concept of a time tank and energy tank, and how there are things that you wish you could do, things that you may want to do, things that other people do and seem like they get it done, and it just seems like there's not enough time to get those things done. So I think when it comes to the time tank and energy tank, sometimes we wish we just had more time. And I think it's so easy to use time as an excuse for not getting certain things done, right? So I feel like, whether it's talking about like working out and going to the gym, it's almost like a lot of times you'll hear people say, I just wish I had more time in the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people, I feel like you said this the other day to me. You were like, I wish there was an extra day added to the week where that day was just devoted to chores and laundry and cleaning and organizing.
Like,
and then
everyone knew that on Flatter Day, whatever the day is called, that no one was doing a party, nobody was doing an event, nobody was doing anything. Everybody was like cleaning or doing laundry, doing
yard work, things around the house. And then you actually have a weekend then, where you can disconnect and unplug and have a good time without having to worry about doing all those other things. But in reality, there is no extra day. In reality, there isn't more than 24 hours in a day, right? So I think it's so important that we choose wisely how we spend our time, right? And not just how we spend our time, but like you said, what we invest our energy and our emotions and our feelings in, know? And I think it's so easy sometimes to want to do so much and want to do different things that we are just giving out and giving out and giving out and using up all of this energy, and in return that we don't see that payout right away, or we don't see that reward right away. And it's hard because we may want to do those things, but it's, is it wise for you to do that right now? Do you really have the time for it? Yeah.
And I think that a very important aspect of time and energy management is understanding where you can double up. There's a lot of people that, because of their timing situation, don't have time to like, quote unquote, go to the gym. But I've seen how people kind of like double up on that. So what they do is at their office, they have a standing desk. Other people have like little treadmill things under their desk or whatever, which is like, well, I don't have the time to go to the gym, but at work, I do have the ability, if, your work culture allows that, to get a standing desk where I'm like standing and I'm moving during the day, burning some calories, or I have a little treadmill thing under my desk where my feet are moving. There's people that get like little bikes and stuff like that.
Yeah, listen, just this week on social media, Pastor Mike Todd had posted, he was in the studio getting an album that their church worship team is putting together. together, and he literally had one of those small treadmills. There's no like armrest or anything like that. It's just a small, rectangle machine that just goes as a treadmill, and he's literally there having conversation with people as he's on the treadmill working out. And it's something that, again, when you have that drive to do something, you'll figure out the way to get it done. And like you said, you may have to double up and take advantage of certain moments and environments that you find yourself in.
It's really about assessing your time and your energy and really taking advantage of it. Recently I was speaking to someone in reference to how I always found myself working jobs, corporate service jobs, where I would get my work done really early, and then I would have like a whole bunch of time to just kind of like chill. And I remember that back in the day I used to be like, maybe I should take an online class. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. But I was like, nah, it's fine or whatever. Like, I was like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure out another time area in my schedule to plug that in. And I never did. And it's kind of like, yeah, but you have a good 2-3 hours in your day where you're supposed to be working, but if you're such a great worker, you get it done, or maybe your job doesn't give you as much work to do. It's kind of like double up, take advantage of it. Maybe even, if you want to be really good and speak to your manager about it, you can. Don't speak to no, stop. But there's certain things that you have to like really like figure out and be like, you know what? I can fit this in this, and that'll give me the opportunity to get it done, because I may not have all the time in the world to do it, but I have the energy. I'm sitting here, I'm not doing anything. So it's kind of like, let me figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the important things is, like you said, I think a lot of times we have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of things that come to mind that we would want to do. And sometimes a big reason why we actually don't get those things done is because we don't schedule it, right? We don't plan for it. So I think the importance of that time tank and energy tank, I think a lot of times, we don't schedule things properly, or we're not planning accordingly, right? So I feel like, when you're so involved in so many different things, right, it's so easy, like we were talking about last week, to not give your 100% in all of those areas. And sometimes there are things that you can do to not allow that to happen. And one of them is scheduling. Is there something that you can put on the calendar where this is happening? So because this is happening on this day for this many hours around this time, I need to remember this and plan accordingly. I can't do anything after this, or I shouldn't do anything before this, and it's the same thing, whenever if you're doing something within ministry, knowing like, around Christmas time, the holidays, it's always so busy. But around the holiday season, we love to put on some type of play. We love to put on some type of production or musical. All of that takes planning. So if you start in, on December 1st to get together and say, hey, we should do this. It's a great idea. Sounds amazing, right? You should do that. I just think if you would have scheduled or planned and prepared accordingly, you would have realized, in order to do this in the most effective way, in order to do this to get the best results, we need to start a few months earlier.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that you can actually apply in the most simplest things, even in your spiritual life. One of the things my wife and I have been talking about lately is about like scheduling prayer time. Like this idea, and I think that people kind of like have this thing where it's like, oh, we know we need to pray, so we'll pray later today. And it's kind of like later today comes and it's like you forgot, or you fell asleep, or you got tired, or something came up or whatever. And it's kind of like I can see how sometimes people feel like that's kind of like unorganic to have to like schedule and put an alarm to do like simple things like prayer or reading the Bible and stuff like that. But it's practical things that you have to do. If you don't have that management skill to understand that, I'm going to have to, stop what I'm doing a little earlier, or the day before I'm going to have to go to sleep a little earlier so I'm not as tired later in the day, whatever, and if you have to like create a schedule for you and your spouse to be like, all right, every this and this at this time, we both have the alarm, whatever it is that we're doing, we have to stop it because it's time to do this, this prayer, or we're going to read this book together. We're going to do that. And it's important because I think that especially in the life that we're living, where people have so much to do, or they have so many distractions at their disposal. The phones, the shows, the binging, the this, the that, where sometimes you kind of get enveloped in all of that you forget. Because of our humanness, we forget. And then by the time you remember, you're like, oh, I was supposed to do that at 9. And it's 9:30. Yeah, forget it. I'll do it tomorrow. And you don't. and that develops a cycle. But if you have a pesky alarm where you put like in bold letters, get down on your knees and pray or something like that, it kind of like encourages you more to be like, you know what, I actually need to get this done.
Yeah.
Let me go do that.
And I think it also shows a commitment, right? Like you're committing to this, you're writing it down, you're setting an alarm, you're reminding yourself, because like you said, we are human, we forget. You know, there are people that if it's not on a schedule, on a calendar, they're not doing it, you know, and a lot of times those people, you know, they may not be so liked, right, or as popular, because it's like, man, every time I want to like, you know, we want to get together, it's like it has to be scheduled or on a calendar. You need more anticipation, but it's almost like there are reasons why some people are like that, you know, and it's the idea that you make time for the things that you love.
Yeah.
So in essence, if our relationship with God is that thing that we love, that we value, that we prioritize, we will make the time for it. And now in 2022, we have so many different ways that, you know, and methods that can help us make that time and set that time apart, whether it is setting an alarm. There are even like apps on your phone, you know, is there a whole, you know, the screen time, you know, lets you know how many hours. They're literally like, you know, there's the app on the iPhone that lets you know you can put in a certain amount of time that you don't want to be on the phone for, and it'll like alert you like you've been on the phone or you've been on this app for this, you know, long, and you have to like disable that feature because it won't let you access that app anymore, you know? So there are things that we can do to help us kind of frame our time where we can use our time wisely, properly, accordingly, where we can get more things done. Because then I also think of the opposite, right? Where I think of the individuals that feel like they have so much time. Because there are those people that feel like there's not enough time in a day. And then there are those individuals that are like, man, like 4 days out of my week, I have no idea what to do, right? And I just have hours, you know, free, and I'm not sure what to do about it, you know? And it's just funny because through the years, you know, different people that I've met or encountered, you know, within our church who, you know, let's say they lost their job at one point. And I remember they were like, you know, I lost my job, but, you know, I had all this free time now. And I decided, you know, I'm going to help in a food pantry, or I'm going to help here. I'm going to, you know, spend my time doing this. I put this together. So it's what you do with the time.
Yeah.
You know, we all have 24 hours in a day, right? And if you are looking at someone else and you are just feeling like, man, they get so much done, they do so much, they're involved in so many things, yet they're still able to get things done and be productive, so can you.
Yes.
You know, and I just think a lot of times, like I said, it's looking at that calendar and seeing where, you know, can I schedule those things that I want to do.
Yeah, and I think it's important, you know, we keep talking about the subject of time, but I think energy is very important as well.
Yeah.
Not everything that you want to do, you can do. You know, unfortunately, you cannot, you know, do a triple major and work 2 full-time jobs and be a wife and have 3 kids and be in full-time ministry.
To do that,
and
but it's the effectiveness of it.
Yeah.
Because there are people that can probably fit that category, right?
Yes.
But it's like, are you being effective in all of those areas?
Yes. So, somewhere along the line, something's getting neglected.
Yes.
And that's the truth of it.
Yep.
Whether it's ministry, whether it's home, whether it's your schoolwork, because it's too much.
Yeah.
Yes. And then this is the thing about energy tank. People have different energy tanks.
Right.
You may be able to do a double master, work full ministry, and be a successful husband. That doesn't mean that everybody else can do that also. So that's the other thing where you can't look at, oh, so-and-so could do it, I could do it too. Hold up. Evaluate yourself. Can you really? Yes. You should push yourself and try to be, you know, have that initiative to do better and to do more, but also be realistic. You know, you cannot throw 43 things on your plate, whether it is because you're trying to overcompensate for something, whether it is because you want to set up an appearance for yourself, or whether it is that you're actually very ambitious and you're trying to do it. But if it's not manageable because you don't have the energy for it, it's something that you're not going to be able to sustain in the long run, then it's kind of like you have to evaluate and figure out what you're going to drop.
Yeah.
You know, there's something that you're going to have to leave to next semester. There's something that you're going to have to leave to next year. There's something that you're going to have to like wiggle around and be like, you know what? I'll focus these 3 days on this and I'll focus these 3 days on that because my energy isn't there.
Yeah.
Because I want to be effective, because I want to give 100% in those areas. So that's something that is very important that people need to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize that communication helps that process, right? Because there are certain things that you can't help. For instance, I remember there was a time when, my college, when I was like in my last year or semester of college, I had to take a certain course at a certain time, and it really interfered with me coming to church on certain days because that was the only time that course was offered. So it was about 3 months where there were just certain things I couldn't do in church during the week because of that, right? But it's not like, you sign up, you do the course, you do all these things, and you don't let anyone know. So there are people that, need you for certain things or certain roles and positions you have, and you're just not being, effective, or you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And people are left guessing, like, where have you been? Or like, what has been happening? It's almost like, well, communicating the idea that, listen, this is, something that has an end date, right? There's a beginning and an end. It's going to be 3 months, but in these, 3 months is the only time I can get this done. But after that, right, that part of my schedule will be cleared. And so I think it's recognizing those temporary seasons, right, where you may not have as much time, or you may have to just switch things around.
Yeah, and I think that's, maybe we can even do a pod just simply on that subject. But I think that there's a balance to that act. I think that for many years, I just had like this really strict philosophy. And maybe I think it was bad to a sense, because I was so like strict on it, of the idea that nothing can interfere with my church time. Yeah. So if like the idea of, I can't go to a service because I have to take a class, to me was like blasphemous. Like, how dare you? Right. Señor viene primero, forget the school and stuff like that or whatever. But I think that there's a balance to that. And I think that God also sees your heart and your intention when it comes to that. There are times where unfortunately you will have to, that class is only offered for that semester at that time. You tried everything, they have nothing else. And, those are things that God understands and God knows. Now, but then there's the other extreme where there's people that can care less about church and ministry and all that other stuff because they have all these endeavors that they're trying to keep all their fingers in. And I think that that's an extreme that is very neglectful and is very dangerous. To put yourself in a position where you can't fellowship, where you can't, come to church, where you can't worship, where you can't congregate because you want to go ahead and do so many other things, is kind of like you really have to, these are all areas and moments where you really have to reflect, pray, and meditate to be like, Lord, is this the right step for me? Is it right for me to go away to college because, that's the career I want and that's the school I want to go to? Is that the right move for me, even though I'm gonna be far away from church? Is it okay for me to take that job even though it's at night and I'm not going to be able to go to, like there's certain, and then there are extreme circumstances. There's people that have no choice. Unfortunately, this is the cards that were dealt to them and this is what they have to do. And in those extreme circumstances, it's different. But there's people that have the choice to do or not to do that. And sometimes they choose to do it because of selfish reasons, and it's really not what God wanted for you to do. So it's kind of like that balancing act of, God, is this, I know this is going to take away from my church time, but maybe there's a different way I can compensate for that. And then it's only temporary. It's not forever. These are all important conversations that everyone should be having within themselves and with the people around them. Like sometimes you have to throw that, whether it is with your parents or your close friends or your leaders and your pastors, and having those conversations about like, listen, this is about to interfere with my schedule in a way that I wouldn't want it to, but these are the reasons why I think it's important to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, it's incredible because the way we were designed, I feel like God created us in such a way that our body, our mind, our emotions, our spirit, right, gives us signs and warning signs when we are running low on energy because we are doing too much. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times it's our pride that doesn't let us get to the point where we can really sit back and evaluate and think, what do I need to stop doing or do less of, right? Or what extracurricular things, things that I'm choosing to do, what things do I need to, maybe get out of my schedule for this season? And I think a lot of times our pride gets in the way where, we have this hustle mentality. We have this mentality that we're a go-getter, we're driven, we're going to get things done, we're going to get this degree and that degree, we're going to work this many jobs, we're going to have this much money because we want to go on all these different types of trips and all these different things. And all of that is great. But if you notice that your energy is beginning to decrease and you're getting warning signs and that check engine light is coming on and then that gas light is coming on, if you ignore all of those different signs, what awaits you, right? So I believe that there are signs that even God gives us that lets us know, like, we are running low on energy. Something needs to be done. So it's like, what do you do when you begin to run low on energy?
Yeah.
What do you do when you feel like, you don't have the strength, you don't have the power, you don't have that passion anymore, and you are dragging yourself forward? So I think it's important to have those honest conversations with yourself and realize, I think I'm doing too much. I think I have a lot on my plate. Maybe a year ago I was able to handle this, and a year ago I was killing it. A year ago I was able to handle all of these responsibilities and do this and do that and have free time. But in this season I can't.
Yeah.
And it takes a certain, level of humility to recognize, I've been doing this for so long. I've had this responsibility for so long. Or, I would love to earn a second degree and go for that. Or I would love to, take this, class, this fitness class, or this course, or this, that, and the other thing. But I don't think this season right now is the right time for me to do that. Yeah. Because then sometimes you just go forth with it. We do it, and then we end up paying the consequences later when we have a burnout moment, when we have a breakdown, when we have a moment where we just want to quit everything and we want to just run away and escape, And it's like we just ignored the signs that we were receiving along the way.
Yeah, and I think that, listen, at the end of the day, everyone has a lot of things going on and on their plate, and there's some things that are necessary and like are non-negotiables, non-movables. Like, I have to get this done, I have to go to work, or I have to take care of my kids, or I have to do this. And then there's other things that you have the flexibility to move around. Yeah. And even with those non-negotiables, the ones that you feel like you cannot move, there's nothing that's impossible for God. Through prayer, through guidance, there may be certain things that, certain work schedules that can change, certain responsibilities that God can give you the strength to accomplish, either in a more timely fashion or not feel like it's so draining. There's a lot of things that we can do when we seek them through God that would help us with our day-to-day, so that we're never running on E, whether it is on our energy tank or whether it is on our time tank, where we always feel like we have more than enough to get us through the day.
And then just remembering that we could always ask God for wisdom too. I feel like a lot of times we just feel like we always have to figure it out on our own. And I feel like there are ways that God also gives us the wisdom to do that, whether it is speaking to someone, that you trust and letting them know, whether it is just researching on your own and figuring out, how is it that I really plan my weeks or my months, or how do I, have this idea, this project in mind, what's a good time frame or timeline, and I think a lot of times we just forget to seek help. It's important sometimes to seek help. It's important sometimes to ask for advice. Don't be afraid. Don't be too prideful. Don't be too, involved in your own life and trying to put all the pieces together that you just neglect the help that's around you. There is help available. And even when you feel like, your tank is on E, there's always, a way out. There is always a way to refill yourself. There's always a way to just get that strength back. And I think that in order to do that, you just need to be honest with yourself and recognize, am I running low on energy? Do I feel like there's not enough time in a day? Have I lost my passion because of this? Have I lost my devotion and my drive? Have I lost interest in this? And a lot of times it's not that you lost interest or that, you lost passion. A lot of times it's just those things that you were passionate about. It's no longer fun or no longer enjoyable because of the low energy you have. And you're always racing against the clock.
And it's about the idea that sometimes we forget where our well is. Where do we go to get refilled? What is it that we're supposed to be doing in order to fill our tanks up again? And sometimes it's just because of oversight, or because you haven't been on top of certain things, especially spiritually, the way that you're supposed to, that without even noticing, you've allowed yourself to get to E, and it's kind of like you feel like, where was it that I used to go to like feel refreshed? Where was it that I used to go to get rejuvenated? And it's kind of like you have to remind yourself and find your way back to that. So,
absolutely.
Hope you guys are blessed, and that this little extra conversation on this subject, on this topic, has brought more clarity to you, so that you can really self-evaluate and see, how am I doing in these areas in my life? And if they need improvement, let's get the work done.
Absolutely. So once again, thank you for tuning in today. And we just pray, like he said, our conversation blessed you, encouraged you. If you are not subscribed, be sure to subscribe to us. Be sure to, leave us a review and a rating. If you are listening to us, you can head over to our YouTube channel and check us out on YouTube at God Life Culture Podcast. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at God Life Culture Podcast as well. And, we just look forward to connecting with you and, you being blessed by all the content and the conversations that we put out.
So thank you once again for tuning into the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. That's
God Life Culture.
Until next time,
see ya.
bye.